The manhwa starts inside of a cave with a man panting, and panicking, asking how he ended up in a situation like this. He starts by explaining how much he hates his father, and how he constantly hoped for his death. And today is the day it finally happened. He died from a heart attack. His father was a criminal, his father was a womanizer, and of course he was also extremely greedy. He was many things, but mostly trouble for the main character. But he did one thing good for him after dying. We see the man saying he's done cleaning up, and he wonders if his dad knew he was going to die soon. But he decides it doesn't matter anymore, and that he shouldn't care about it. He says with the morning sunlight beaming through his curtains, outside he can see workers heading to work, yet he can just stand here and relax while drinking his coffee. He starts to pog out saying he's in need. I'm sure everyone knows what it is. He says he didn't expect that his father would have a fortune he hidden away of around $3 million. He says his father was only great after his life. Now he can do whatever he wants, buy a house, a car, women, he's got a short list. But he's not interested in those things. The doorbell rings and he says it's here. Before the delivery man can say anything, the package is taken inside. The man dives onto his bed saying yay, and that he ordered stuff for his dream bedroom. He's made 3 vows to himself: to not work, to not have friends, and to never get married. He says work is the worst, and he knows it makes him a bad person, but he doesn't care. Having friends means a constant battle of trying to outdo one another. And then there's marriage, vowing to spend the rest of your time with someone you love. And we learn his cross-eyed father had married 12 times. And he doesn't want to repeat his father's mistakes. He just wants to play games while chilling in his bed. He says it's time to play the games he's beat piling up, and that he will 100% them all. 2 months later we see a finished screen, and he says that's dungeon attack done. His room is completely filthy now, and he wonders what game to play next, but gets a notification on the screen saying there's a new message. He's surprised since he never added anyone, and it's a message from the creators thanking him for playing. He says they must have put countless hours into this, and compliments their game. Then sees they are asking for him to take a survey. He's curious, so he does it. It asks if he prefers cute girls or mature girls. He wonders why this question is relevant, and we don't see what he picks. Then it asks if he gets excited from hitting people, or being hit. He says geez. Then as he keeps going through the survey he just gets bombarded with questions that don't pertain to the game. He says it's creepy and he doesn't want to do any more, and then the window asks if he knows how the world ends. He says of course, since he completed the game. Then the window asks if he'd be able to change it. He gets even more creeped out. Then realizes what it is. Never mind, he says it's got to be a scam message, and soon it will ask him for money. He says he can't trust anything. We see a cockroach on his floor. But he sees it. Then starts to freak out about it. He hears a clicking sound, and it turns out he accidentally pressed the controller. He selects yes on accident, and his screen begins to glow, blinding him. He puts his hands over his eyes, and vanishes into thin air, leaving his musky room. Now he's back to panting again, and he wonders what happened while looking at his hands. He quickly realizes they aren't his, then he feels a sharp pain and falls to his knees. We hear a man saying to tell him where the treasure is. And if he doesn't answer they'll get serious. They mock him saying, "Oh demon lord." And the man says this is how his new awful life started. He wonders what treasure they are talking about, and why they called him the demon lord. He wonders if they actually meant him, and where he is. There are 10 dudes in the cave with him, and he really wonders what's going on. He says he was playing a game, but he can't remember exactly what. But he says now isn't the time for that. His whole body is in pain. We see his leg looks like a pretzel. I'm sure he'll walk it off. The pain is unbearable for him, but he reminds himself to lock in. He tells himself to think so he can find the best way out of the situation. He tells the men to wait. He asks why they keep calling him a demon lord. One of them grabs his horn, asking if he's lost his mind, and calls him Demon Lord Dantalia. This clicks something within the man's head, and he remembers now. An RPG where the heroes go on a journey to defeat all the demon lords. Dungeon Attack is what the game is called. Your goal is to save the world by ridding the world of them all. It's an insanely difficult game where you die, respawn, die, repeat. The ending of the game is the collapse of the world. And as for Dantalian, he is trash. Ranked 71st out of the 72 demon lords, and he dies first. He realizes now that the world he is inside of is the game, and he's a weakling. He wonders how this is even possible, but quickly realizes how dear his situation is currently. The guy grabs his horn again, then punches him, which sends him backwards. Dantalian slides across the ground. He says the situation is getting worse. The bandana man tells the rest that it's time, and they start to laugh and shout. Dantalian realizes he's about to be killed, and gets punched again. As they beat him, he monologues cursing his father, and says he just started to live a comfortable life, but now he's on the verge of death. His consciousness begins to fade, and he sees someone sitting at a table. As he gets closer he sees that it's his father, and he's laughing at him. His father words something to him, and Dantalian says he remembers something like this before. He explains that in the past he was kidnapped by people who held a grudge against his father. It was the 4th time he was kidnapped as a child, and the kidnapper wonders why he's so calm. It was because he reached his limit. He's taken to a warehouse and decides to bet it all. The kidnapper pulls a gun out, saying it's not a toy and he'll kill him. Dantalian says to shoot him then. He decides to make a bet since if the gun is real it's his win. He grabs onto the gun's trigger telling him to do it. If it's fake, it's his loss. He pulls the trigger, and nothing comes out. The kidnapper's hand shakes and he drops to the floor in fear, asking what the hell is wrong with him. In the end he turned himself in, and he lost his bet, but this allowed Dantalian to realize the one who survives in the end has the stronger resolve. He says it slipped his mind. Bandana Man says it's his last chance. He approaches him again, asking where the treasure is. Dantalian says he died once that day in the warehouse. He smirks and says he can shape this whole situation into what he wants. Bandana Man says he'll take his silence as his final words. Since he isn't a patient man to begin with, he calls forward a bald guy with a hammer, who asks if he's sure about this, asking how they'll find the treasure. Bandana Man says they'll find it themselves, just kill him already. Baldy starts to swing his hammer down saying he can regret it in the afterlife. As the attack gets closer to him, Dantalian says he'll tell him. The man stops his swing. Bandana Man is excited. Dantalian grits his teeth, and forces himself to stand up. With nothing but his determination to survive this, he says he will tell them where the treasure truly is. Baldy laughs saying he finally gave up, and thinks how they can kill him after he hands the treasure over. Dantalian realizes he's screwed since he doesn't know where the treasure is, and he can't point in a random direction or else he'll die. He needs to quickly think of a plan. He kneels saying he's been defeated, and that the treasure is inside of the Demon Lord's chamber. However, it is hidden with magic. And the only person who can undo the magic is of course him. He looks up to gauge their reactions, and is greeted with a bright light that slashes down in front of him. It's Bandana Man's blade, and he warns him that if he is lying he will kill him on the spot. Dantalian says he understands. Bandana starts to hype his boys up, causing them to roar and cheer. Dantalian says somehow he's overcome the first obstacle. But it's just the start from here on. They can't kill him now since they need him, but that'll change in the chamber. So he needs to think of what's next. As they walk, Bandana tells him to walk faster. Dantalian apologizes. Bandana says to stop stalling. They keep walking, and Dantalian still hasn't cooked anything up. He says they are armed, so he doesn't know what to do. He looks around for something to use, and says since it's his castle surely there's still a monster around. Bandana tells him to keep moving, and thinks about how they'll finish him soon. Dantalian sees nothing but monster corpses, which makes him realize he cannot rely on others. He wonders how long they have until they reach the chambers. He says if only it was a real game. Then something clicks and he realizes something. He smiles while saying Eyes of Zeus. He says since it's the game world he can surely use this, and then we see a minimap appear with information on the area. So now he has an advantage, since he can use game skills. Of course Eyes of Zeus is a skill in the game, and it allows him to just see everything in the surrounding area. It's a high-level skill usually only obtained in the middle of the game, but there is one place it can be used early on in the game. Which of course is the tutorial dungeon that teaches adventurers the mechanics, Dantalian's castle, more like a cave. He says he spent too much time panicked, he didn't even think about this. He looks at the info, and sees how there are no troops alive. And plot convenience ensues, and a status window appears before his eyes saying there are no troops, so please hire some immediately. He's taken inside of some mind dimension, and it says contract with Hades. He can see all of the monsters available. He says he didn't know Dantalian would have an ability like this. Then he realizes he only has 100 Libra. He gets annoyed, asking what the hell he's been doing with his Libra, and how he can only afford 8 goblins. But there are 10 adventurers. He wonders if he can get a golem and launch a surprise attack, but realizes they are almost at the chamber. He begins to cook, while looking at all of the info, and finally comes up with some sort of plan. He says the odds are around 60%, but that's too low for him. But he says he has no time to think, he has to go with it. And that the adventurers need to prepare themselves. He says he has to gain their trust first, but before that there's something he needs to know. He uses another skill called Apostle of Aphrodite, I'll just call it Inspect. We see their stats appear above their heads. And he explains how the skill lets him see people's stats. He laughs saying he can see it all. Bandana turns around, and tells him to stop doing the stanky leg and walk faster. Dantalian apologizes again, he starts to smile like a villain. Saying the counterattack starts now, the inspection skill, shows you even hidden statuses of the people around you. So he can utilize this to figure out which card to play. Bandana tells him again to keep walking, and of course threatens him again for the 40th time. Dantalian says alright, but keeps cooking. He says he needs to make Leaf, the bandana guy trusts him. Even if it means taking some risks, he will definitely succeed in taking them down. They keep walking through the cave, and Dantalian sees a dripped out skeleton. Saying first things first. He shouts telling everyone to wait, they are all confused and turn around. Leaf asks him what's going on. Dantalian says he's sorry for stopping them, but in the passage ahead is a trap. Leaf asks if he's serious. Dantalian says yes, and if they go any further there will be dozens of invisible arrows flying at them. And none of them will come out of it unscathed, so he will proceed on his own first, to disarm the trap for them. Leaf asks why he thinks they'd let him go. One of his men tells him that the path is very narrow, and too dark for them to see anything. Dantalian starts to walk down it, Leaf starts to yell at him, saying to stop trying to run away. But Dantalian continues saying he can't run if he wants to with his legs the way they are, and it's his way of showing respect. They are different from the previous adventurers since they didn't try to instantly kill him. He says if they don't believe him then just follow behind, but he cannot guarantee their safety. Leaf is surprised, and tells his guys not to be scared and follow him. But nobody else wants to do it, and they remind Leaf about the first trap they encountered, saying if they were careless they'd have died. Leaf gets annoyed, asking if they are even real men. And as they argue with one another Dantalian continues down the pathway. As he gets deeper he wonders if he's gone far enough, and he says please work. He grabs some of the arrows off the corpse from earlier, and brought them with him. This is where things will get started. He starts to grit his teeth, and says it isn't a big deal, then he raises the arrow and stabs himself with it. He screams out in pain. Loud enough that the adventurers can hear it. They ask if it was Dantalian screaming. Leaf yells asking what's going on. Dantalian says to just wait since the arrows are still coming. One of Leaf's men asks him what they should do, and Leaf says to get ready, and if they try to back out now he'll kill them. The adventurers look worried, but are too scared of Leaf to say no. They all begin to slowly walk forward. Leaf shouts asking where he is. They notice a blood trail, and start to follow it. As they keep going forward they find Dantalian on the floor, with an arrow in his thigh. They ask what happened, and he groans in pain. He leans up saying he must have passed out. Leaf asks him what happened with the trap. Dantalian tells him to be at ease, since he got rid of them. The adventurers are happy, and Leaf asks why help them, saying he could have just stayed quiet about the trap. Dantalian says he said it earlier, they are different from the other adventurers. They didn't try to kill him, and let him live. It moved him, and that's all there is to it. While he got hit by one, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. He pulls it out and says they can continue on. Leaf is starting to respect him more, and we see his likability increase towards Dantalian. Dantalian sees this, and then starts to get spammed with notifications as the rest of the adventurers also start to like him too. This is what he was waiting for. He says it's not enough, but it's a good start. Dantalian says they can keep going ahead. Leaf says he doesn't know what he was thinking, but he plans to use him. Leaf says that with his wound he'll just slow them down, so they have no choice. He tells one of the adventurers to lend him their shoulder. One of them instantly steps up and helps him. Dantalian thanks him, and Leaf starts to laugh saying this is their gratitude for clearing the path. And they can keep going forward. Dantalian says things are going well, but that Leaf is still not trusting him. But now it's time for him to continue performing in the second act of the one-man show. They finally reach the entrance to his castle. Leaf says it's more impressive than he thought. He opens it for the boys, and laughs saying they've finally made it. Then he tells Dantalian to show him where the treasure is. A teardrop hits the floor, as Dantalian starts to cry. They all wonder what's going on, and ask why he's crying. He says to forgive him, and he says it reminded him of his comrades, and his family. Leaf laughs, asking if demon lords have families. Dantalian says yes, and in the past even someone like him had those that he called a family. He says until that day when they suddenly appeared, we see him running down a hallway while some knights are chasing him. They ready their bows, then fire at him. The arrows fly at him, but land into something. He turns around to see an ogre asking if he's alright. He used himself as a meat shield. He tells Dantalian to run as fast as he can, and to leave it to him. Dantalian says no if he's leaving, then he has to go with him. The ogre gets stabbed with more arrows. Dantalian begins to cry more. The ogre says not to worry, just run quickly. As Dantalian's tears begin to pour out, it paints a story of him running away while the ogre holds them off. Dantalian tells Leif and his men they all died protecting him. The adventurers all start to feel empathy, saying they are sorry to hear it. One of Leif's men says he thought the demon lord would be purely evil, yet he can see him crying for his comrades. And that Dantalian doesn't seem evil to him. Due to his Oscar acting, the adventurers' likability all begin to shoot through the roof. Leif says it's different than he's heard. He recalls a woman telling him that the demon lord is a scum who has no tears, or blood. He begins to like Dantalian more, but he starts to have a shit-eating grin saying he'll still use him as needed. Dantalian says everyone, thank you from the bottom of my heart for bringing me back to this castle. It's as he thought, they are all different from the ones who killed his family, and perhaps the dead may forgive them, but now the treasure here and his life all belong to them. It jumps a bit later. Dantalian tells them all they've arrived to his chambers, and as promised he will hand the treasures of the castle over to them all. Leif laughs, asking where the treasure is. Dantalian says as he mentioned before it's concealed by magic, and he will now undo the magic, so please stand back. They say alright, and all back up to the entrance of the chamber, and ask if it's far enough. Dantalian says yes, and turns his back to them to hide his grin. He says it's going very well, and it's now time for the finishing touches. He already knows there's no treasure here based on his statuses, the only thing he has left is the 100 libra. But if it's enough to fool them it's perfect. He explains how in the world of Dungeon Attack 1 libra is 15 silver coins. And that the game is set up in a way that the items and money you discard appear where you drop them. So he plans to use this to add into his trick. He gets ready to drop his libra, then raises his hand into the air. He says he is the 71st demon lord who rules this land, and brave heroes in the name of Dantalian he will grant them treasure. They all watch his performance in anticipation, and it quickly turns into awe as coins begin to appear out of thin air over and over around the room. The adventurers begin to laugh, saying this has to be a dream. Leif laughs too, as silver coins begin to rain onto them all. They quickly start to scoop the coins off the floor. Leif still laughs, saying they got their hands on it, but the laugh turns maniacal, and his respect towards Dantalian jumps up by 50. He tells his men to divide the treasure equally. Leif says they can use Dantalian more, and it'd be a waste to get rid of him now. Dantalian asks if he can say something to them all. Leif asks if he has more to give them, and says to wait a minute for them to pick all this up first. His likability with them begins to rise higher and higher. He says he apologizes, but he must say this now. And that there are around 30 adventurers who have entered the dungeon. Leif says huh, and everyone is surprised. Dantalian says he's used magic to inform him if anyone enters, but he didn't expect this. They start to panic, and Leif says there's no way they can handle 30 people. He asks if there's another way out of the castle. Dantalian looks down saying only the way they came in. One of them asks what'll happen if they attack this place, saying they'll clear this place out hella fast with that many people. They all start to shout and worry, but Leif is speechless. Dantalian says he has an idea. If they cannot avoid them, then they should fight them. Leif asks what he means. Dantalian asks if he has a map. Leif says yes. Dantalian says his magic isn't enough to tell which route they'll take, but that he can act as a decoy. Leif asks what he means. Dantalian says with how many people there are it must be a military division, and they probably used magic so they can surely sense where he is and chase him, and there are 3 routes they can use to get to the exit from here. So if they take a different route from him and run outside they can escape. Leif starts to think about how he's willing to sacrifice himself, but asks him if he is planning to just run away and is bluffing about the intruders. Dantalian says no, he would never do that, he just wants to help. But there is no time for him to convince him. He whispers something into Leif's ear that isn't audible to us, but Leif smiles saying he understands. And that they'll go with his strategy, but not to tell the rest since it'll upset them. Leif yells, saying to stop worrying, just grab the treasure and group up. Dantalian says he knew that Leif wouldn't believe him, but it's still working as intended. We see the adventurers helping Dantalian out of the cave, and they say Leaf sure is bold for this plan. Dantalian kindly flashbacks us to after they gather the treasure. He told them they are going to split into groups and head for the exit. They ask if he's serious, saying it doesn't make any sense. Leaf tells them to shut up and turns into Nickelback, saying look at this photograph, there are 3 routes leading to the exit. And they'll probably only take one route, and with how many there are they would be no match, so they just need to take their chances at survival. They all look worried, and he tells them there's a 100% chance at least one side survives, and if they are lucky both groups will make it out. He says he'll be taking the treasure with them. They bark at him and he tells them he's not going to keep the treasure to himself. One group will be going with Dantalian, but it's a blessing since if they survive they can use his bounty and become heroes. And it's worse on the side with all of the money, they are still worried. And he says to show some guts, asking if they want to die like dogs. He asks about their families back in the village, asking if they'll keep being cowards. He says he knows them better than that, and he wants everyone to survive this. They all start to get hyped up. We see Leaf's group, and he's happy that they were dumb enough to listen to him. He thought it would fail, then recalls his conversation with Dantalian, and how he whispered saying he can send some of his men with him to see if he's running away or not, and he can just make up some reason to keep all the treasure to himself. Since if what he says is true then some of them will be sacrificed with him and he'll have to split the treasure with less people anyways. Even if he's lying there's no way for him to escape, so it's a win for Leaf. Leaf goes back to laughing saying in the end he'll come out on top from this all. Dantalian of course had read up to this point, saying it's perfect like he planned, and now it's time to do it. He looks at the monster summoning menu and decides it's time to finally kill them all. The cave begins to shake violently and the adventurers begin to wonder if it's an invader's attack. The ground continues to shake violently, a strong gust of wind starts to blow by them, blowing out their torches. They drop them, and ask Dantalian what's going on here. Dantalian covers one of their mouths, saying it's better not to make a sound, unless they want to suffer more. He unsheathes the man's sword, saying he's indebted to him. Then starts to gut him like a fish, while the rest are distracted with what's in front of them. They see a purple magic circle. It starts to pull rocks on the side of the cave and form it into a monster, which of course we know it's a golem. It roars at the adventurers, causing them to feel fear and possible hunger. It causes some of the ceiling to start to fall onto them. One of them shout to run, and the rocks start to land around them causing a dust cloud to form. As it fades one of the men sees his friends have been crushed under the rocks. Then he notices it's got one of them in its hand, and he bravely rushes in and attacks the golem. But his sword just breaks into multiple pieces, and he's surprised since he genuinely thought it would somehow work. It's already crushed his friend, and goes to swing at the man. He sees this, but realizes it's too late and gets turned into a meat crayon. The final adventurer sees this, but is too scared to move at all, and is speechless. Then he realizes Dantalian is behind him, asking him what's going on, saying they need to run. But we hear him get stabbed, and we see Dantalian has shoved his blade through the man's chest. The man asks why, and falls to the floor. Dantalian says it's obvious, after all he is a demon lord. At Leaf's side they wonder what the earthquake was, asking if a battle started with the other group. He says it looks like Dantalian was telling the truth, and he did a good job. But he quickly realizes how wrong he was, as they see Dantalian standing before them. Leaf asks why he's here, as Dantalian gives him the good old WWE stare down. He says it looks like he didn't run into the intruders. Then asks where the rest are. Dantalian pulls out the blade saying his friends are all dead, every single one of them. Leaf says this isn't funny and to stop fooling around. Dantalian asks if he cannot accept reality, saying it's just as he's thinking right now. He's killed them all. Leaf tells him to say it again. Dantalian laughs, saying they were all idiots. He should have seen their faces when they died. Leaf starts to get pissed, and realizes they were fooled from the start. His likability with them all instantly turns into hate. He says they are dumber than monkeys, and that makes him grateful. He wants them to get angry, so he starts to laugh like he's insane, asking if he really thought a demon lord would be on their side. Leaf starts to unleash all of his anger, shouting as loud as he can, and they all brandish their weapons while running at him. As they get closer and closer we see glowing eyes behind Dantalian, then the golem appears and punches at the group. One of the men is instantly killed from the shockwave, while another is crushed into the wall. The survivors begin to scream, and the golem backhands toward them. One of them tries to block it for some reason, and turns into a packet of ketchup that was stepped on. Leaf is still alive, and watches as Baldi goes for an attack on the golem's head. He hits it, smashing the golem into pieces. He looks over at Leaf saying he's done it. But Leaf's expression is still fearful, as we see Dantalion stab Baldi in the back. Dantalion thanks Leaf, saying it was all due to him. Leaf then sees the golem begins to form again. Leaf's sweat turns cold. Dantalion tells him that killing a golem is easy, you just need to destroy the core in its chest, but you need the knowledge and experience. But if they stayed calm and worked together without being tilted, they could have won, but now the power dynamic has changed. He asks Leaf what he's going to do. Leaf realizes he's entirely different than before, and that this is the real Demon Lord Dantalion. He starts to panic, but tells himself it can't end like this. He says he's been in this situation many times before. No matter what Dantalion pulls, he can handle it. Leaf drops his weapon, saying he's lost, and says to kill him. Dantalion says he understands, and starts to approach Leaf. Leaf laughs in his head, saying just a little bit more. Asking who would be killed by him, we see him hiding a dagger behind his back. Dantalion looks at the monster menu, and looks down it, but keeps walking forward. Leaf starts to get antsy, saying it's almost time, and begins to count the steps down. Saying he'll kill him in a few more steps, but Dantalion stops moving. And says, Leaf, I can see right through you and everything you're up to. Of course we know he can read his thoughts with inspection. He starts to laugh in his face while pointing the blade at him. Saying it's checkmate for him, Leaf starts to sweat profusely. Saying how dare you mock me, and that it isn't over yet. He pulls out his dagger and leaps at Dantalion. He says he's going to be the one to die here. He quickly loses his momentum and falls to the floor. He faceplants, then looks down at his leg to see a slime attached to it. He asks where it came from, then looks back in front to see Dantalion getting closer. He raises his sword at him, but the golem grabs onto his arm. All we're left with is a crushing sound and Leaf screams echoing throughout the chamber. Dantalion says it went exactly like he thought, and he can't believe it went so well. He laughs, asking Leaf how it feels to have his pride and everything else crushed by someone who he thought was weaker than himself. How does it feel being killed by someone who he found inferior? Leaf screams in complete terror. Leaf asks himself where did he go wrong. He wonders if it wasn't killing Dantalion earlier, or if it was when he got the map from that woman. No, it was from the very beginning when he challenged a demon lord. He realizes now, he could never win against him. As a demon lord is a truly terrifying existence. It cuts in Dantalion having no idea where he is inside of smoke. He sees his father's face, saying to harden himself. His father taunts him, saying no matter what choice he makes his life will be worse. Dantalion swings his hand calling him noisy, and says to get lost. But all he hears is the echoes of his father laughing at him. Then we hear a woman's voice saying my lord. He opens his eyes, and says she sees that he is awake. He quickly sits up, asking what she is doing. She says forgive me, but it didn't seem like he was waking up. Then she pulls out a paper saying she won't beat around the bush. And that the 100 libra she loaned him 2 months ago, plus the interest of 96 libra. So 196 total. She wants him to repay her right now. Dantalion wonders what the hell is her deal. Finally he says let me explain, and jumps back to 3 weeks ago. After killing Leaf he fell to the floor, right under his golem. He sighs, saying it's finally over. Then he sees another window appear, that says tutorial completed, and his level has gone up, along with some of his skills. It still says he is 100 libra for some reason. But then now has the option to pick a skill now, and since the tutorial is over he can only choose one of the skills. And the skill will be downgraded to level 1. Then he realizes that this means this is actually the real start. He wonders if he's going to have to continue living as Dantalion. He says as the way things are now, there's no guarantee he can return to his world. So he needs to choose the one skill wisely. He looks at it while thinking about which one suits him the best, then picks Apostle of Aphrodite, or what we call inspection. Some may think of it as simple mind reading, but being able to see the stats too is very useful. He picks it and starts to sweat like crazy. He begins to pant while saying he's tired, saying it feels like he's been up for a long time. He tells the golem to keep him safe, as he wants to sleep now. When he woke up he was in a bed, and the room was destroyed. He thinks the golem brought him here. He really hoped it was just a dream, but he is still inside of Dantalion's body, and he has his memory fully intact too. He resolves himself that now he'll have to actually live as a demon lord. Then the woman from earlier appears in his room. He turns around to see her, and says her gaze is like that of ice, and her name is Lapis Lazuli, Lala for short. It jumps to him in his throne, and he says like he said. The one who borrowed money from her isn't him. She glares at him, saying okay, but she doesn't understand. 2 months ago it was definitely him who borrowed money from her, and the Chamber of Commerce. She pulls out the note from before, saying this is the proof. He starts to sweat, saying that it isn't working, and they've been going back and forth for a whole week. He just finished dealing with the adventurers, now he has to deal with debt collectors. He wonders why he has to clean this mess up, and he calls Dantalion an idiot. Then says Lala is just as dumb, for lending money to someone like him. He realizes something, then says he has a question. She asks what, and he says if the money cannot be paid back, then what happens? She says in that case he has to declare bankruptcy. He asks what happens if he does that. She says the Chamber of Commerce will take ownership of the Demon Lord's castle. She says they will be making a few requests of him, and he doesn't need to think, but simply do as he is told. He says okay, last question, then asks what day it is. She is confused, and he begins to release a menacing aura. She says that she doesn't understand. He asks her again what day, month and year it is. She says to forgive her rudeness, but it's April 17, 1505. He realizes it's already past the repayment date, and if the interest continues to pile up he'll go bankrupt. He starts to laugh, saying he understands. He then tells Lala that he has a proposal for her, and that he wants her to lend him another 10,000 libra.